Hi everybody, thank you for stopping by our YouTube video. We are April, Iri, Patrick, Rita, Teguh, Yosia, and Julius from Executive MBA Program IPMI. And this video is a summary or review of a book titled The World is Curved, Hidden Danger to Global Economy by David M. Smith. Started out with Dow Jones having crashed 387 points or nearly 3%, facing a worldwide liquidity crisis and what was called the Great Credit Crisis of 2007 to 2008. We have to thank our Kampus IPMI, our teachers of Global Economy and International Business class, Ibu Yulita Susanti and Prof. Roy Sembel, who have directed us to this wonderful book to assist our learning of this interesting subject. Let's start from the Great Crisis of 2007 to 2008. The financial crisis was primarily caused by deregulation in the financial industry that permitted banks to engage in hedge fund trading with derivatives. Banks then demanded more mortgage to support the profitable sale of these derivatives. They created interest-only loans that became affordable to subprime borrowers. How come relatively small mortgage, USD 200 billion, issue affect the worth of hundreds of trillions? Globalization creates great worldwide wealth, which created a volatile ocean of capital roaming the world in search of investment opportunities. And US, as the foundation of financial system, faced crisis of confidence. So what is securitization? Securitization happened because of new risk management techniques to make capital less expensive. It allows global investment to be divided, being spread out and separated to multiple income streams to reduce risk. And what's the impact securitization to mortgage market? As you can see, the portion of securitized mortgage grown over the year before it bursts in crisis 2007 and 2008.
Globalization, dangerous ocean of money. The old financial model where US and other countries act as a closed economic system is out. In 1980s, we see liberalization and deregulation of financial market where major fund like pension fund can flow to small medium-sized venture through private equity fund, private debt placement, hedge fund, higher bond, venture capital bond, etc. When there is budget and account deficit in the US, Japan, China, and other countries will come investing because they believe price is cheap and American economy will go up. Global economy has created enormous wealth and poverty reduction since the 1980s. Entrepreneurial capitalism is the reason global economy invests in America because it is seen as an anchor in free market and stability, transparency, law and political environment. In short, overall conditions that raise economic productivity. There are mainly four types of brokers that own US debt. Investor from oil production nations, Asian banker with a wealth fund, hedge fund, and private equity fund. Hedge fund and private equity are highly agile, unregulated, with risk more than regulated market funds as mutual fund. It invests in many international markets with many instruments, and they will be the first to find the new entrepreneurial creativity or new economic expansion. Capital flow is the base of global economy and it is like oil to engine. It is lubricating the engine called entrepreneurial capitalism. In panic, it can stop flowing. In subprime mortgage, risks are owned across the globe and with no confidence, panic happens. Despite enormous wealth creations, we also see great crisis. Turn out government and market don't know each other that much. Great crisis of 2008 start from deregulation of lending and raise of rate, and this caused homeowner problem to pay. Global market is fragile and instability. Political intervention can cause reactions between countries. For example, China trade war, and this will affect the oceans of capital flow. Authors believe that the best policy must make America still the best destination for global investment. The policy must support entrepreneurial capital system.
Let's look at China. On the surface, China, a place where market trading and business risk-taking seems to be the national DNA, would appear to be likely candidates as the world haven for entrepreneurs. But like most things in China, the situation is far more complex because China has an authoritarian regime. It cannot fully profit from the information revolution, thus inhibiting the technology that is at the heart of growth today. True, Chinese entrepreneurs have proven to be awesome capitalists throughout Asia, but in China itself, their prospects are limited. The Chinese company accounting system became a form of creative writing and metaphorical expression because of the questionable input from the Chinese senior management. China is a huge unpredictable force in the power to help or sink the world economy. When the Chinese bubble bursts, and bubble always do, China could instantly become a deflationary threat to the world. China could have no other choice but to dump its stockpiles of commodities and finished goods onto the world's market.
In early 1980, Japan was in a great economy, even its GDP was exceeded America. Japanese yen was stronger than US dollar. With the stronger yen, Japan company keep expanding to the overseas to maintain its global competitive advantage. In domestic, they maintain the low interest rates. The impact of the low interest rates is decrease the consumptions and increase the asset bubble price. In January 1990, the stock market collapsed. The Japanese central bank actually continued to raise the interest rate. It to crush the asset price bubble until September 1990. More important, the job creation stopped, wages declined, corporate profit declined, and also many bankruptcy. Tokyo Insiders mentions the period as the Japanese lost decade 1990. Many Japanese lost faith in their future. Japanese housewives plays the important role in the financial decisions in a household since the salaryman or husband is seldom at home, and then the husband likes to go home very late. So the Japanese housewife doesn't want to give up in these situations. They are looking for the greater return for the bigger investment. They are looking for the purchase bond or the overseas investment. And this one become one of the largest behind the scenes forces in the global foreign exchange market and often bypassed by the large Japanese institutional intermediary. In the world of currency trading, the common questions lately has become, what are the Japanese housewives investing in this day?
In this chapter, we will discuss about a European monetary crisis that occurred in 1992, which can be a reminder that as much as we grab on firmly to the certainty of the status quo, change is inevitable. This is particularly the case in economic policy when human judgment comes into play and the power of financial market is grossly underestimated. In this case, the result was the brutal collapse of the British pound, which explains why the British people still use their own currency, pounds or sterling.
To understand economic of Europe past, present, and future, we can look to Germany. How the German economy began to be restructured. The European Currency System, or ERM, was set up to allow for flexibility. These government-initiated realignments were intended as a relief valve from market pressures. By 1992, the fact that Germany's currency ball dominated the collection of currencies tied together under the ERM had created considerable envy across Europe. The Germans had raised interest rates only 2 months before as an insurance policy against future inflation. The British wanted Germany to cut its short-term interest rate to help relieve currency pressures within the ERM. If the rate was cut, The Deutsche Mark would be expected to weaken against the other European currencies, and the ERM currency relationships might return to normal. Smith captures the spirit of it when he speaks of the sheer greed of bankers and investment bankers that was most responsible for the crisis.
People imagine central banks as having magical powers. When a financial market crisis develops, institutions such as the Federal Reserve simply wave their magic wands, lower interest rates, and restore the financial landscape to normalcy. The declining power of central bank may be the most convincing argument for why the world is cursed. However, there are no limit to how aggressively central bank can reply with monetary stimulus. The latest case study of central bank limitation is the period in the United States in early 2008. After the initial unfolding of the subprime mortgage crisis, the Federal Reserve at time faced a nasty combination of rising inflation, a housing collapse, a bank lending crisis, and a weakening dollar, all of which threatened a complete meltdown of the American economy. Because of the weakening economy and unstable financial market condition, Fed policymakers could resort to what Smith called Option 1. They could slash short-term interest rate dramatically, perhaps by as much as another full percentage point in the one fell swoop, with more cut thereafter. Option 2 would involve more restrained interest rate cutting. Let's talk a little bit about a politician in the context of a globalization economy. As you know, there are two main political parties in the US. They are a Republican Party and Democratic Party. Globalization was not identical with a Republican or a Democratic, since there was little difference in economic policy making between Bill Clinton, a Democrat, and Ronald Reagan, a Republican. Clinton became the champion of globalization and liberalized financial market. He led an amazing prosperity and global poverty reduction. Both Reagan and Clinton saw globalization as a flaw, but a necessary strategy for escaping from great inflation era in 1970s. But when subprime mortgage crisis happened, both political parties are turning from Bill Clinton's pro-globalization policies. That is why when today's politicians dare to be different on the issue of free trade and liberalized capital, they should be remembered that often theirs can be deadly. Okay, thank you.
We come to the end of this video. So after we heard so much hidden dangers to our global economy, the question is, what can policymakers do to overcome this financial downturn?
Central bankers, important government regulators, and responsible members of political leadership must be able to develop a financial architecture in Goldilocks, which is just the right amount, direction that is neither too soft nor too strong. On the other hand, government must discover measures to improve the International Credit Rating Organization performance. And for some developed or emerging nations, they also must be mindful with their financial opens. The IMF has become less enthusiastic in recent years about helping developing nations to liberalize their financial system and movement of foreign investment money across borders. This is due to many developing countries' financial system lack transparency and proper regulation. Who will support financial globalization if none of these organizations do? The only solution, in Smith's opinion, is a group of brave, visionary policymakers from the public and private sectors, as well as central banks and responsible members of the political leadership, to step forward with an effective agenda to avoid disaster if the globalized model of free trade collapses.
I think we should close this with final quotes from Paul Samuelson. What we know about financial crisis is that we don't know it very much. The world is dangerously curved. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.